PokeRAMBLE Podcast.
Welcome everybody to the Pokemon Ramble Podcast. On this week's episode, our big topic will be the Journeys anime. We'll be talking about the reboot of the podcast and also what's coming to the TCG and much, much more. So yeah, there we go. How's it going? I'm your host Kumail and I'm joined by my co-host Amit, also known as the Frontier Brain. How's it going, my friend?
Oh, it's good.
It's good.
Yeah, I'm loving the new podcast theme. You've done a stellar job with that.
That's yeah. So that theme that you all heard was done by Amit himself, and I didn't know you had this talent in you.
Do you know what? I was actually complimenting the design of the video podcast, not complimenting my own work. No, it's cool. It's nice to be back. It feels, fresh and exciting, and I'm geared up for it.
Fair. We'll talk about the design and whatnot in a second, but really I just wanted to pay attention to the fact that this is the first episode we're doing since the reboot.
We've evolved.
Yeah, we have evolved actually, yeah. And I'm quite happy with how it looks. People will be asking, why did we reboot it? Well, really it's down because of the consistency. We did about 5 episodes in a space of about 3 or 4 months. It was originally intended to be weekly, but I had PC issues, and that really hampered my sort of motivation because I couldn't get anything to work properly. And the other thing was I wasn't happy with the sort of old sort of graphics that I did for the overlay. And I really didn't have any idea on how to cook up something new until I did have an idea. And you see this overlay at the moment that we have. It was something I mocked up in my head, and my good friend Phil J. Woodward on Twitter, he helped bring it to life, so I'm eternally grateful to him. And obviously we had to bring podcast form back with us for the reboot, so he's still there, and that was designed by another friend of mine, Ben. Please be excited. But yeah, with this reboot, I just wanted to have a second go at things, and I'm really happy that we have rebooted the podcast, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're a bit more grown up. It's nice, we've come to a fresh, clean slate, and we've got lots of exciting things we want to talk about, ideas for future episodes. It's the first time we've really planned podcast in advance, so we kind of know what we're doing, next week and the week after. It's exciting. It feels, much more grown up.
I think the only time I planned something so big was when we had the sort of DLC reveal, which is our first ever episode, and I was actually listening back to that yesterday for a good half an hour. I kind of turned it on for a minute. I think I was only going to listen for a couple of minutes, and ended up listening for half an hour. But man, that was a great episode. Probably my favorite episode out of the lot.
Well, we've got an opportunity to top it now.
Yeah, I guess. So yeah, this podcast really came about because of you. You had this idea to do a podcast, and I guess it was down to the fact that we had so much to talk about in relation to Pokemon, and we just thought, instead of just talk on WhatsApp, why don't we just get in a call in and record that? So that's really what this...
I mean, it's really nice because, I found a friend in you who is just as passionate about Pokemon as I am, and I hope that lots of other people who are listening to us not only share our passion for Pokemon, but actually just enjoy hearing what we have to say about it and what our thoughts and feelings are about not just the things that we'll talk about, but also we'll try and theme episodes around different aspects like the anime, the games, the TCG, and it's a chance for us to broaden our horizons as well.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's exciting, and I hope that other people enjoy listening to us and hearing what we have to say, because for me it's going to be a lot of fun talking about something I'm really, really passionate about. There's no better way to spend a Sunday evening than doing that.
And I guess you mentioned that it's good for us to talk about it and have other people hear about our thoughts on it. And the other thing I do want to do on the side with this podcast is actually bring people on. And so do like a meet series where we meet sort of different people, learn about what their experience was with Pokemon, what they want for the series, and what makes them so attached to the series. That's what I sort of want to do later on as we progress with this podcast. I don't know if you've got any sort of hopes and dreams for this.
I think it's just to get to talk about some of the things that I love. I don't know that there'll be lots of new and exciting things to talk about, but actually to have some time to talk about all that old stuff that we really love, the old anime, the old games, old experiences of, being a kid and getting to enjoy stuff. It's great to get to share that stuff again and almost relive it in a way. So that for me is the real sort of joy of doing this. So I'm looking forward to that.
So I think basically where we should start off is we did this in the first ever episode, and I guess it's only appropriate for the reboot where I ask you, what is your experience with the series?
Yeah, I mean, I fell in love with Pokemon as a kid. Played a lot of it under duvet covers at sleepovers and things like that.
Did your Game Boy ever had one of those sort of attachments where you can put a light on and stuff like that?
No, I was a torch kid. I had a torch with me. So regular old Game Boy Color torch, and that was my setup until I got a Game Boy Advance SP, which had a backlight, and it was the best thing ever to have a backlight that you could actually toggle on and off as well, which made playing under the duvet covers a lot easier. But that was my sort of introduction to Pokemon. Started playing. I want to say Pokemon Gold, like dabbled in it when cousins had it and things like that, and then picked up Pokemon Red, played the whole game, and obviously then fell in love with the series. Wanted to do more. I was already, I think, at that point, really in love with the anime. I was watching the cartoons probably before I started playing the games in earnest. So for me, it's been a lifelong passion. I was very fortunate at one point in my life to get to do a bit of collaboration work with the Pokemon Company. I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. But,
oh, we have to. What?
Yeah, we will. We will. But it's been a fun. It's been a really fun part of my life. All of my life, I've sunk literally thousands of hours into the Pokemon games, both main series and spin-off. So, I'm hoping that kind of passion for comes through on the podcast. But yeah, it's great to be in a situation where you have something in your life that you're really passionate about and you get to talk about. So that's sort of my experience with the Pokemon series. What about yourself?
I mean, yeah, growing up, Pokemon was the thing. You had the cartoon, you had the cards, and you had the games. And I started off, watching the cartoons and playing the games. Pokemon Red was my first game, but I think the game that has sort of really that I really understood and sort of remember the most was Pokemon Silver. I still remember where I was when I first got it. I was on my way back from Hemel Hempstead, and my dad handed me over the Pokemon Silver cartridge, and I put it in my my Game Boy. I was going to say DS, but that's not right. Put it in my Game Boy Color, and I never looked back since then. And I still remember where I was when I beat Red. I was driving past Asda's. I was in the back of the car. I wasn't driving at like 10 or whatever. But yeah, no, I just love the franchise. I guess it's this magical world, really, when you think about it. And it's full of Pokemon, different characters, and that's sort of what I love about the series. It's full of discovery, and it's waiting for you to discover it. So yeah, I love the series for that reason, really. And yeah, that's it, really. I mean, I think you had a few questions that you wanted to pose to me, and I should probably pose to you, to get to know one another a bit better.
I thought it might be nice, for newer listeners to, get to know us a bit better. And I thought, what better way than asking you some Pokemon themed questions? Obviously, you have to answer the first thing that comes into your head,
okay,
and then maybe justify it as well, because I think it'll help give some context. So, question 1, what Pokemon are you most like?
This is one of the easiest questions of all time. It's Totodile. It's obviously Totodile. That was my start in Pokemon Silver. But, the personality of Totodile we sort of get from the anime, where we had Ash's Totodile, who was very much a jokester. He was always sort of positive. He was always sort of goofy and happy. And I think that just embodies who I am, really, as a person. So that was quite an easy one for me. How about yourself?
For me, I think it's Noctowl. So, I'm told often that I look like an owl, which is part of it. But
yeah, I can see it.
To be honest, I find myself being, quite contemplative, quite quiet. And then when I, do say something, I'd like to think it's probably not. I'd like to think it's quite profound. Very different to my podcast personality, where I think I'm a lot more eccentric. But just day to day, I tend to be a bit more passive. So Noctowl, I think, is one of the Pokemon that I like to associate with.
What's that saying? A wise man has something to say, whilst a fool has to say something.
That sounds about right.
That probably encapsulates me and you.
But yeah,
fair. Yeah, that's the first question. What's the next one, sir?
The next one is, of all the human characters from the Pokemon universe, who would you most want to travel the Pokemon world with?
I'll let you answer that one first, though. Go on.
All right, so I think for me, and I got to think about this one, I think it would probably be Brock, because I feel like he's the perfect combination of bromance, but also he's got the skills to cook and do all the stuff that I don't want to do. So
Yeah.
like he'll put the tent up, he'll cook, he'll sort everything out, he'll heal my Pokemon, he's got that skill set, and I can just have fun. So I think Brock would be a pretty good person to travel with because I can lean on him pretty heavily. What about
Yeah,
you?
he definitely seems like the sort of guy that'll take responsibility. He's the responsible adult. He does goof
Yes.
off a bit, but he's responsible at the end of the day. So that's a really good pick. But I mean, mine was super obvious. It has to be Ash because he would just keep things interesting. He's got all sorts of contacts around the world, and I guess there wouldn't be a dull moment with the sort of adventures he goes on. So I guess it would probably be Ash. But actually, I did
Would
want
you
to.
ever be would you ever be jealous of the fact that he was such a good trainer?
Do you know there would be that, but at the same time, he's such a resource for you to learn from, and so I'd be quite happy learning from him. And yeah, I'd just knowing that he goes on all these wonderful adventures and has all these different experiences. I'd love to be a part of that.
That's a good answer.
But I did want to ask as well, because mine was such a vanilla answer. If you had to choose a companion that you like the most from the anime series, who would that be? Apart from Brock.
Ah, but I was going to say, apart from, because I do love Brock in the anime as well. Um, that's a hard one.
So,
I'll tell you why it's a really hard one is because I think they've all got very different like personalities.
mm,
And apart from Brock, who I think is like the almost like a bit of a father figure,
mhm.
it's hard to pick like my ultimate favorite. I mean, I was actually a really big fan of May, and her journey through Pokemon Advanced,
Yeah.
and how she kind of grows into this really confident, assertive trainer.
hmm
So maybe May, maybe that would be my answer.
See, that was my exact answer. I mean, going to Pokemon Advanced, we have this character in May who at first isn't too sure of what she wants to do. She sees Ash with his Pokemon battles, and that wasn't really her style. And then she later on finds her true calling as a Pokemon coordinator and enters all these Pokemon contests. And I think in my eyes, she didn't seem inferior to Ash because she's got her own thing and she was excelling in that. And then she also comes back later on in the series in Pokemon Diamond with the Wallace Cup to compete, and we see that she's one of the top trainers in the world at that point. So, Pokemon coordinators in the world at that point. So I think definitely May's probably my favorite of the companions, just because she's, for me, the first sort of character that diverges a bit away from Ash, and she's got her own sort of motivations and stuff like that. So yeah,
Fair enough.
I guess that's it. I think the next question you had was, what's our favorite Pokemon spin-off game? And we both have the same answer. So instead of me repeating myself, I'll guess I'll just leave it to you to divulge why it's the best spin-off game of all time.
So actually, our favorite spin-off game of all time is Pokemon Conquest.
Yeah, easy.
Because it was just so unexpected, so steeped in kind of this battle lore and a whole other world, very very different to any other Pokemon game. Combat was fun, the storyline was really good, and if you've never played Nobunaga's Conquest, what's it? I think the official title is
Nobunaga's Ambition.
Nobunaga's. I always get it wrong. Ambition,
Yeah.
Pokemon Conquest. Go try it out. It's a hell of a lot of fun on the DS. Well worth a play.
And I guess the
But
interesting thing about Pokemon Conquest is that it's in the name. You're going to conquer kingdoms. Pokemon and conquer doesn't really add up for me in the sort of themes that Pokemon promotes. So it was quite an interesting sort of game to have, really, wasn't it?
yeah, it sets a very different tone for Pokemon. I mean, it definitely goes along the lines of them being used much more for battle and for game than for sport.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting tone in that perspective, but it's a good game. The other game that I always like to talk about that just no one has seemingly played is PokePark Wii, particularly the sequel, PokePark Wii 2, because I maintain that the combat in that game is the best combat of any Pokemon game I've ever played.
That's a big claim.
And I'm sure we'll talk about it in a future podcast. I'm sure we'll go into why I think it's so great. But I wish one day they would make a full-on game with combat like that, which I feel like Pokken in a way kind of compares to, but Pokken is very, very technical and very, very driven by timing and combat, whereas the PokePark Wii just felt very fluid and felt very free,
Mhm.
and very almost very open. in a way that Pokemon really isn't, because you're confined to a small arena and sometimes a 2D or a 2D or a 3D space. So for me, Pokepark Wii is a standout as well.
Just before we move on from that, I mean, you got to give a shout out to Pokemon Conquest's sort of soundtrack. Very obviously Japanese influence, but it's just so good. It's just so good.
Yeah, you're actually one of the first people who shares like the real passion for the soundtracks of the games. I always love the main series ones.
Sure. Yeah,
I'll try and get a CD or whatever is coming out of the soundtrack from the games. But you're someone who's really really into that as well. That's always a cool.
When you think about it, when you're playing these games, the sort of soundtrack adds something to the world. It can convey a message sometimes, and so I've just finished playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, but that game has a ridiculous amount of great soundtracks as well.
Yeah,
but anyway,
sure
let's not get sideboarded by that. I think the next one is actually one of my favorite questions you've asked, because it really got me thinking. But hit me.
Yeah, so question 4: what's the coolest piece of Pokemon merchandise, unofficial or official, that you own?
So, listen, I've got this Pokemon electronic pinball machine back from Gen 1. And it's just
wow.
Yeah, it's just such a nostalgia piece for me, and for that reason, it's probably my coolest piece of Pokemon merchandise, because it was a great fun game.
How big is it?
Huh?
How big is it?
I'd like to say over 30 centimeters.
Oh wow!
It's quite thick. But yeah, you're probably thinking of a big pinball table. No, I'm talking about like an electronic pinball sort of machine, rather than yeah.
Okay.
But the other thing is a cop-out answer, but I love mugs, and I've got a lot of Pokemon mugs, and they're all very precious to me. So yeah, Pokemon mugs as well, I guess.
Nice.
What about you?
Very cool. Yeah, I had to think long and hard about this, because I have got quite a few things. But one of my favorite things that I got for, I want to say Christmas just gone, my partner Sophie got me a wooden plaque that says "Choose Your Starter," and it has 3 cutouts of Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and Charmander.
Oh, that is cool.
And they're keyrings,
Yeah.
so you can hook them hook them into the plaque, and it goes up on the wall, and then your keys are off there. So like every time I go out the door, you can like choose a new starter, which is really cool. I know it's a like little quirky thing.
Let me guess.
But I did think that was very, very cool.
Bulbasaur's missing.
What?
Bulbasaur's missing.
No, Bulbasaur's there. It's fine.
Yeah.
They're all there. They're all there.
That is pretty good, and it's got application as well. It's not something you just leave to get dust, I guess.
Yeah. The other cool thing that I really like, they came together, is it's a coaster that I think has been laser printed with the silhouettes from Pokemon Stadium of all 151 original Pokemon, and it's super. Like, the coaster's really small. It's about the radius of a mug, but there's just really fine detail on the Pokemon, and I like being like, oh, can I find this one? Can I find that one? And that's good fun as well.
And the last question.
The last question: if you had to become the gym leader of a city or town from the Pokemon games, but you couldn't change the type of the gym, and you could only use Pokemon from that region, which gym would you want to take over?
See, now this was such a good question, and for me it was easy, because it ties into my favorite game of all time, Silver/Soul Silver, right? It's Ecruteak City, simply because the city itself has got very cool Japanese architecture. You've got the bell tower there. In the remakes, the soundtrack of Ecruteak City is just. It just hits so nicely, so calm, so peaceful. You've got the Koto in the background as well. In terms of places of interest, obviously we've already talked about the bell tower, but you've got the Ecruteak dance theatre, where you've got the kimono girls and the evolutions they have, and you have to battle them in the game, but I won't talk about that because that gives me severe PTSD. But yeah, and then so that would default make me Morty as a gym leader, and you said only from that region, but he uses Ghastly, Haunter, and Gengar, so
Ghastly's native to the Johto region, so that's fine.
Yeah,
you can do that.
And I guess if you really want, and Morty as a gym leader anyway, I think he was really cool. He just looks really cool. His design's really cool. And if you look at this promotional artwork by Midori Harada, if you just Google it. for Heart Gold and Soul Silver, you'll see Ekritik City in the fall, and oh my god, it's just so beautiful. So yeah, it would definitely have to be Ekritik City for me. How about you?
Good answer. I think for me, I had to think a long time about this. I really like Blaine's gym from Cinnabar Island.
Ooh.
And a couple of reasons for that. One, I love the riddles. I would
Mhm.
love to make really crazy riddles for all the trainers who are coming in.
Mhm.
Although I would kick out all the bandits because I don't know why his gym is staffed by bandits. But
Hey,
also the
they need
fire
a
type
place to
Pokemon
call
from
home as well, you know. So come on.
yes, true. But the fire type Pokemon from Gen 1, I mean, you've got Charizard, Ninetales, Arcanine, Rapidash. There's some really good Pokemon to choose from. So I think if I had to pick, that's probably where I'd set up shop.
You wouldn't be worried about volcanoes and stuff.
I'd be terrified.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and it's a bit hard to
Hey,
get
that's
there.
why
Like
I've got a fire
you,
type
you
Pokemon.
say to your parents, "Come over," and they're like, "How the hell are we going to cross these bloody whirlpools?"
Absolutely.
Yeah, it would be a bit of a pain, but that's a good one. I mean, Magmar as well, obviously the famous one, being
Yeah.
there. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Before I move on, I should probably say this podcast is going to be a weekly affair for the most part. I think when the DLC comes out, there might be a bit of a delay because I want to get through the DLC and then maybe have a long spoiler cast as soon as we finish it. But yeah, it's going to be a weekly affair. These are all going up onto YouTube over at the Pokemon Ramble Pod. So just search for it. It should be up tomorrow. There's an RSS feed we've set up, so once the first episode goes up, I'm going to try convert that or add that to Spotify, and hopefully you can get it on Spotify as well. But yeah, for the most part, it's going to be a weekly affair. Recorded live on Twitch every Sunday. It's going to be on YouTube for on demand, and then hopefully Spotify in the future. So yeah, anything you add before I move on?
No, it's exciting. I mean, it's nice to feel like we're going to be doing something every week again because it's a nice sort of checkpoint to say, everything that's happened in the week in the world of Pokemon, catch up on all the latest news. It's going to be good. Going to be good fun.
So, without further ado, we're going to go to our first segment. And that is on the Pokemon Journeys anime. Now, I think the first thing I wanted to hit on is breaking news from today. TV Tokyo have announced that the Pokemon anime is restarting back from episode 23, which is the episode that was postponed due to COVID-19. Now, Tokyo had been declared in a state of emergency, and now that has been lifted as of recently, along with other cities across Japan. So yeah, production's back for the Pokemon anime, and the first episode will be releasing on June 7th. And this also follows other animes who've literally just restarted as well. So I'm quite excited to see the Pokemon anime restart again back from 23. It was getting to an interesting place, but I'll save that for the future when you catch up. The other thing with the Pokemon Journeys anime is that in the UK, we got the first 4 episodes early. So do you want to talk about your sort of initial impression? Spoiler free, obviously. I don't want to give away any of the plot details, but what did you sort of think of the first 4 episodes?
Yeah, we'll definitely keep it spoiler free. So, I mean, it's exciting. Season 23 of Pokemon. Ash is obviously off on a new adventure, and he, is traveling with a new companion, having said goodbye to all his friends at the end of the last season. Getting the first 4 episodes early was really exciting. Actually, it's nice to get to see Pokemon before the US for a change, which is always nice.
And you said it was on demand as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's available on demand in the UK. It actually went off the on demand service earlier today.
Oh,
so if you did manage to catch it on Pop Now, I think the app is called. Well done. Otherwise, you will have to just catch up when it's available later in 2 weeks' time. It'll release for the US on Netflix. The first 12 episodes launch on the 12th of June, and I'm sure that they'll find their way onto various streaming sites soon after that.
Will you find your way on various streaming sites after that, or?
Sorry?
Will you find your way on various streaming sites after that?
Yeah, I'm going to have to because the UK release schedule is so far behind the US that I'm going to have to find a way.
Yeah.
And Japan, obviously, as you mentioned, are 23 episodes in already. And nice that they're back from the hiatus that they took because of the coronavirus situation. So
yeah, it's going to allow these sort of schedules to continue without any sort of delay in the future, which is good.
Yeah. So my reaction, again, keep it entirely spoiler free. The first thing that really stood out for me is how much I missed this art style. So it's very different to the Sun and Moon art style. It takes you back to I don't want to say takes you back to the sort of XY art style, because it is definitely a significant improvement on that.
It's a hybrid,
Um,
I'd say.
yeah, but it's got for me, it's got an art style that I associate more with Pokemon, and that's, it feels much more comfortable watching it again.
Hmm.
One of the things I didn't quite like about the Sun and Moon series, and I know a lot of people shared the view, is that the art style felt a bit too almost like extreme anime for a Pokemon series, where
Um,
typically it's a bit more cartoony.
it was more sort of for a younger audience, sort of yokai watch sort of looking show. The art style was very, it was very dumbed down. No, that's not the right word, but it was meant for a younger audience. I think that art style, when you look at it. So, and even the voice actor for Ash was saying that she didn't quite like how Ash is portrayed, and even she had to revoice her lines to make Ash sound a bit younger than he normally would be due to the art style. So yeah, I prefer this one definitely.
Yeah, and the series in general just feels more grown up. I mean, I know I'm only 4 episodes in, but everything from, Ash's personality, the tone of the series is very much, it feels more grown up than Sun and Moon was. And again, there's probably reasons as to why that is, but I mean, I'm looking forward to see where they take the story, because it does feel like a more grown-up storyline than Sun and Moon, where Sun and Moon was particularly revolving around a school, and it did set the tone for it being a bit more focused around, more childlike experiences. This is very much more a grown-up setting, and I'm looking forward to it.
I guess the most obvious thing to point out with these first 4 episodes is with this new protagonist that we have, you sort of have someone to compare with Ash. With this series, they've already announced that Go is meant to be a second protagonist, not some sort of traveling companion. He's supposed to be a protagonist on his own, like Ash is. And I guess when you compare him to Ash, these episodes do a really good job of showing you how mature Ash actually is, and how his sort of journeys has impacted on his athleticism, his knowledge, and stuff like that. And so I guess that's what I really appreciate about these starting few episodes, is they tell you, no, Ash is an experienced trainer, and when you compare him to Go, you can see that. And I think that's what I really appreciate about these first 4 episodes.
Yeah, and there's lots of, I mean, they do spend a lot of time, developing both characters really well.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to, and again, I'll keep things spoiler free, but when it comes to the battles, it's Ash on the forefront. Not holding back, because he is a really experienced trainer,
Mm-hmm.
Especially compared to Go, and it's nice to see him take right from the get go of a series
Yeah.
the sort of really assertive stance. Typically, when he's moving into a new region, or he's into a new chapter, it almost like they reset his memory, because he looks at Pokemon he's seen before and goes, well, who's that Pokemon? But
Yeah.
but this time he's confident, he knows what he's doing. And the thing I really liked about these first 4 episodes is just how much they emphasize Ash's love of Pokemon. It really shines through in a way that I don't think it has for a long time. And there's these little special moments where you really appreciate just how connected Ash is to the world of Pokemon. And for me, that's been really special over the first sort of 4 episodes. And I hope it's something that really continues, because it's a very different side of Ash that you've seen,
Mm-hmm.
much more sort of not reflective, but certainly connected and thoughtful, and not so much the kind of, I just want to be the best, and whatever stands in my way, I'll tear it down. It's a very mature Ash, and I really like that.
I think when I first watched the anime, episode 1, you can't really judge the anime on episode 1. Episode 2, I wasn't feeling it too much, but I think it was episode 3 and that whole sort of plot, which I'm not going to divulge. Episode 3 is definitely, I think, one of my favorite episodes of the series that made me think, okay, I'm ready to go through this series with Ash again. So yeah, if you're struggling with the
episode 3, episode 1 and 2 really are there to sort of set the scene and get things in place. And you're right, episode 3 just felt like, if this is the direction of travel for the series, I'm totally on board with it.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that, because it just felt like you're in the world of Pokemon, and this is the sort of experiences I want from this sort of a show.
Yeah, and another thing that actually it did really, really well, and particularly episode 3, but also all 4 episodes, in their own way, it really emphasized different aspects of Pokemon, and went into more depth in Pokemon that you don't normally get from episodes.
Yeah.
So it gives the Pokemon more emotion, it gives them more sense and more purpose. more depth to them, and it tells stories about Pokemon in a way that's not just Ash encounters it, he battles it, he catches it or he doesn't catch it, or Team Rocket steal it. It's actually there's some purpose and story and motivation behind why they're encountering these Pokemon and what these Pokemon are doing, and that's really nice. So I hope that continues long into the series. It's a really nice angle for the story to take, and certainly, again, keep it spoiler free. Certainly, the angle that they've taken for Ash and Go's journey is a really nice one. So I think it plays really well into that style.
And there's one more thing I wanted to ask. I know last time we spoke, you were quite terrified of watching the new anime just because of how Sun and Moon ended. I'm just wondering, has this anime done anything to quell your fears that you might have had, or?
Somewhat. It's definitely done some things to quell my fears. And again, I think it's hard to talk about what those were without getting into spoiler territory. So I won't go into any details.
Well, you can say what you thought at the end of Sun and Moon, what you thought was going to happen. Oh no, you can't actually. Yeah, we'll save that for next week's spoiler cast. Yeah,
I was We'll talk about that next week when we do a Sun and Moon spoiler cast.
Fine. Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, I mean, to the best that it can, it certainly does. But we'll talk about it at length next week, I'm sure.
Cool. And so we've already talked about Ash, and I guess Pikachu's one with Ash, really. So we don't really need to divulge about Pikachu. But what do you think of this new protagonist, Go? From what you've seen,
I mean, I like him. I think he comes across in the first few episodes like all new companions do. I mean, he's very sort of he has they try to present him in one certain way, and it isn't until later episodes, certainly 3 and 4, that you start to see another side to him. And I think that second side to him is a much more likable one. Particularly episode 4, actually, you see the side of Go that is that starts to make sense as to how he's going to be a really good companion to Ash and how their relationship is going to work.
Not companion.
Protagonist, yeah. Sorry. Well, companion is, I think, is an equal.
I think with the anime, there's a bit of a stigma with companion because they seem to be a sideshow rather than their own sort of thing.
So let's call him a partner then.
Yeah, partner. Let's call him a partner. Yeah.
But no, I think that's really nice. And I did want to say, actually, I mean, the anime doesn't often do episodes to further develop Pikachu's personality or put the spotlight on Pikachu. It does that really well. And actually, there are moments, not just in the first episode, which, again, spoiler free, is more centered around Pikachu. You'll get that from the title, but actually, all 4 episodes, there's more personality to Pikachu. He's more involved. He's more energetic, and that's nice to see. As are actually all the other Pokemon in the series.
And just before we move on to the next sort of segment, but I just wanted to ask you, what were your sort of hopes for this series going forward?
I think it's to see Ash become, a more grown-up trainer. I think we've particularly with Sun and Moon, one of my big frustrations was it felt like Ash such a step forward at the end of X and Y, getting right up to the battle with Alan and his Mega Charizard, and coming so close, developing this bond with Ash Greninja and saving the world and all of those things. It just felt like Sun and Moon took such a big step backwards in the beginning, where it almost felt like none of that had even happened. And actually, I feel like already Pokemon Journey is just stepping in the right direction, where it's very clear that Ash is not, he's not forgotten, or that Sun and Moon and everything that's happened before it, definitely happened and is part of his memory and part of his experience, and he's showing that off, and that's really nice. So I hope that Ash just continues to grow and develop as a character, rather than them trying to reset him in some way just to continue the series for the sake of longevity. I hope that Ash does get some more evolution and some more growth, because that's always really nice in a character you follow for a long time.
Cool. We'll move on to our next segment, shall we? So, it's time for the podcast from news, and we'll be talking about Sword and Shield first. Now, with Sword and Shield, we've got the Isle of Armor coming up next month. We know it's going to be late next month, but, I was sort of wondering, do you think we're going to get a direct of some sort before the sort of reveal, or are we just going to get a date and we're going to have to wait to play the game?
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering, because there's some really interesting tidbits of news out there in the ether at the moment about...
Yeah, we've got to be careful about leaks and DLC.
No, not leaks, but a really good example is we'll talk about the new TCG set in a bit, but the new TCG set is apparently going to contain a Galarian Slowbro card, which
we haven't seen that yet.
based on the fact that the release date for that in Japan is the 5th of June,
Yeah.
it could be the first time that the TCG gets a Pokemon before the games do, which is crazy to think about, but a very real possibility. There may be a different way Nintendo are going to stagger it,
Yeah.
but just in terms of the release and what more information we're going to get. I mean, I'm assuming that they'll put out some more information on the website, but maybe not a Nintendo Direct. I think it might be nice to just go in almost a little more blind. I think as the way a lot of us did with Sword and Shield, where the overall story and things like that were a lot more of a mystery.
The
So
Pokemon are a complete mystery, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that they don't actually. In a way, I'm hoping they don't do another Nintendo Direct because it would be nice to go into the new DLC, not having a lot of the stuff spoiled for us.
Yeah. I guess it's going to be different as well. Difficult to have a direct at this time. A lot of sort of companies have sort of stopped doing video presentations because of the obvious difficulties that would have on them during this sort of pandemic. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not we get something like that, or if we just get something like a tweet or something like that. Or like you said, the website updates. But yeah, we don't have any specific date yet, even though it's only a month away.
No, but what was really nice is to get the notification on the Switch to say that it is confirmed for a June 2020 release.
I mean, we knew that, but they never sort of doubled down on it, did they? Since the
I
first
mean,
original?
just because of the virus, and I know that I'm sure that their teams have been disrupted. It would have been probably understandable if it had been delayed. It's so great to hear that it's not, because I'm looking forward to jumping back into Pokemon again, and getting my hands on the Alabama.
And then I think moving away from the Isle of Armor, then, if we may, I think you wanted to talk about sort of the mystery gift and what's in raids at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, lots and lots of things going on in Pokemon Sword and Shield at the moment. So we have our third promoted max raid in this series. So G Max Meowth is now available. So if you missed out on the promotions earlier this year, because they did end in January, this is your one and only shot for the time being to get yourself a Gigantamax Meowth, which lots of people want to get their hands on because it is very, very good for farming money, which is helpful if you want to buy vitamins to train your Pokemon. There are other ways to do it, and we'll talk about those, I'm sure, at some point down the line of podcasts. But Meowth is a handy Pokemon to have in your box, just as a utility tool. So
have you got
go grab
one for
one.
Good Nature?
It's not competitive, but sorry?
Have you got one for Good Nature yet?
I do now, yeah. I finally caught an adamant one,
Nice.
which was a big relief. Just so that I can get a bit more damage out. But I mean, most people will just level it up to 100 as quickly as they can, and then try and use the tournament at the end of the game to farm money, because that's one of the quick ways to farm money in the game. Again, I'll try and keep relatively spoiler free for Sword and Shield. But yeah, jump into the game and grab a G-Max Meowth. It's the promoted raid until the 2nd of June.
And how about that Ponyta then? One of the weirdest
yeah,
things
so
ever.
the Pokemon Company are doing 4 giveaways to celebrate the launch of the new DLC. The second giveaway, which is a hidden ability Ponyta, so it comes with anticipation, is available until the 3rd of June. So just jump onto your game, go to Mystery Gift in the start menu, and get the gift via the internet. So nice and easy, no codes required. And there's a second round of gifts that come with the Ponyta for a level ball, a fast ball, a friend ball, a love ball, and a beast ball. And those are 5 balls that you can't easily get within the game. You only get 2 of each one, so to have an extra is, for a lot of people, quite exciting.
It's a godsend.
So go pick those up as well.
And I guess the last sort of PSA we should give is the fact
that we had the May International Challenge. It was lots of good fun. I hope those of you who competed did very well.
I won my one and only game. Boom.
Was that enough to qualify for the World Championships?
I'll get back to you on that.
But the results are out for the May International Challenge, and because the results are out, you can also get your participation prize, which is an Ultra Ball Guy T-shirt. So make sure you go into Mystery Gift, Battle Stadium Rewards, and pick up your participation prize as well.
Excellent. So with that, is there anything else you want to talk about Sword and Shield, or are you happy to move on?
No, that's all the news for this week.
Fantastic. So next up, we've got Pokemon Go, or the segment's name is "What's Pokemon Going On?" I always have a little
You're very
smile on
proud
my
of that,
face
aren't
when
you?
I always have a smile on my face when I say that. But actually, something really interesting Niantic had announced is that they're introducing a new feature called reality bending AR. Now, the sort of example they showed was a Bulbasaur next to a tree, and with this new reality bending AR, you can have the Bulbasaur hide behind the tree. Instead of being in front of the tree usually. So it's a cool little feature. They haven't released it just yet, but they're going to be bringing it soon enough. So look forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a really small detail, but actually being able to have a tree in real life and sort of having to peek around it to find the Bulbasaur, it was very surreal and a very impressive piece of technology. So credit to Niantic, they're doing something very, very cool there.
And I know you said something about Pokemon Go players contributing to a 3D map of the world. What's this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that part of this is why they've launched this new AR feature, but they're talking about Pokemon Go players basically contributing to a 3D map of the world.
Oh, right.
I suppose by piecing together people's pictures and things like that. I have no idea how it works. And when I started reading the article, I got very lost in the technicals. Um, but
As
but
you
it's
would.
it's a cool idea that almost in the same way that Google Street View provides a 3D map of all the road networks in the world. Here's an opportunity for Niantic to tap into another piece of technology that they own, and I guess get that data. It'll be really interesting to see how they desensitize it, because obviously if you're using Pokemon Go in your bedroom, obviously you wouldn't want Niantic to see that. So I wonder whether it will be opt-in or how that will quite work. But it's a very interesting concept, and it'll be interesting to see what they do with it.
Talking of interesting things, the Pokemon company with Niantic, obviously, for the first time ever, decided that there's this thing called community days where for a day or 3 hours during that day, you're gonna have a focus on one Pokemon and you go around catching them with boosted shiny rates. Now, for the first time ever, they've decided to put a vote on Twitter for you to decide, what Pokemon you want to have for that community day, and it was between 4 Pokemon. You had Squirtle, Weedle, Sandshrew, and Ghastly, and our boy Weedle won with 34% of the vote. Ghastly had 32%.
You were very happy about that, weren't you?
Yeah, so Squirtle had 22%, and then Sandshrew had 10% of the vote, but I really wanted Weedle, and here's my reason for really wanting Weedle. One, the picture that they uploaded for Weedle was just, it looked so happy. I mean, how can you not vote for a Weedle that looks happy? It was a happy Weedle. But no, we've already had Squirtle before. Ghastly, we've had, I think, 2 events already that showcased shiny Gengars. So I think we've already got shiny Gengars with legacy moves, so there's not really much point of having that again. Sandshrews only got 1 evolution, but Weedle has 2, so I guess naturally I thought Weedle would be the best fit Pokemon for it. And yeah, that's happening in June. They haven't announced a date just yet, but the runner-up Ghastly will be featuring in July. So well done, everybody. And there was about 650,000 votes in total, so quite impressive. And I think it's a good way of picking Community Day Pokemon. Although, we might see some Russian interference in these campaigns. I tried to make a political joke. It didn't really rub off, did it?
It's nice that the community voted for a Pokemon that hasn't had a shiny form yet. That's always nice.
Yeah, I would have been so pissed off if we got Ghastly. But hey. Moving on from the community day, Zekrom is going to be coming to raids following Reshiram. So you got something to look forward to that. In terms of events, Niantic will be doing 2 events in Pokemon Go. There's a Solstice event, which they always do from June 19th to June 24th, and there'll be a Bug Out event from June 26th to July 1st. We haven't got too many details about that, but stay tuned. From tomorrow, you'll be getting a Trapinch as your research breakthrough. So if you're a huge fan of Flygon, hooray, I guess. And I think lastly, we'll be talking about Spotlight hours. These are hours during every week on a Tuesday or Wednesday. So in this case, June 9th, June 16th, and June 23rd and June 30th. There'll be a Pokemon for an hour that's going to be featured. These Pokemon will be Patrat, Numel, Clefairy, and Kricketot. So again, look forward to that. That's really it for Pokemon Go, unless you've got anything to add.
Yeah, just two more pieces of news. Stay at home has been extended to the 1st of July. So for
Excellent.
those of you who are having to play Pokemon Go from home during the lockdown, good news there for you guys. We get to keep playing until the 1st of July at home. How's that been for you, by the way? Have you been playing from home?
My motivation sort of dipped with Pokemon Go just because I am at home and I've got better things to do at home than stay on my mobile all day. But Niantic have done good sort of. They've incentivized the game a lot more for people, where they've had these special throwback researches for Kanto, Johto, Sinnoh, Hoenn, and they're sort of like these long quests that you have to complete, and at the end of it you're incentivized with a Pokemon. Like we've got a Cresselia with a Grass Knot or a Gibble, which mine ended up being shiny, which I couldn't believe because that is a bloody rare Pokemon in that game. But they've incentivized people to play the game, but some of the decisions they've made in terms of the tasks still doesn't really sit right with me. Some of them are like walk with your Pokemon to get a candy, hatch an egg, go do a raid and stuff like that. And even though there's remote raid passes, it kind of forces you to use them if you want to progress in the sort of research. So it didn't sit too right with me if you know they're promoting stay at home but giving you tasks to go out and do raids, or waste these really precious resources and remote raid passes where you can raid from your house. So yeah, it's been a mixed bag, but they've done a good job. I'm just not interested in playing whilst I'm indoors, to be honest with you. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation where they're trying to encourage people to stay at home, but working with a game where primarily you need to walk around.
yeah, I mean they've done a good job, but in terms of my own motivation, it's just me. I'm not really that interested at the moment. So yeah,
Fair enough.
but a game
the final bit of news.
Oh, go on. Sorry.
Oh, go on. I was going to say the final bit of news.
No. I was going to move on.
Oh, it's important Pokemon Go news. Is that Gen 8 Pokemon, Galarian forms, are due to join the game from the 3rd of June.
Oh yeah, the assets had been sort of pushed into the game, so I will be definitely collecting them because the Galarian forms are great.
Yeah, a Stunfisk from, I think, raids, and then Meowth, Zigzagoon, and Darumaka from your eggs.
Oh no, I hate it when they put it in eggs, but Darumaka is going to be the one to get, I guess, because of the high attack stat.
Yeah, I'm sure.
The best ice type in the game at the moment is Mamoswine, so I can see sort of Galarian Darmanitan maybe taking over if it gets the right moveset. So yeah, we'll see. But with that, if that's all, we're going to move on to the next segment.
Absolutely.
So you want to be a Pokemon Masters? That's sort of a reference to the old song and Pokemon Masters. But yeah, this is a game that's kept me motivated. And actually, with Pokemon Masters, we currently have a new event with Dawn. Dawn's in the game, and she's going to be doing a contest in the game. So she's got a story event about her doing contests. So look forward to that. You can also scout for her and Turtwig separately. And Turtwig's pretty okay. It's not all that, but I think that's what I'm really going to talk about. Turtwig. It's not really a stellar Pokemon, but Dawn's a great Pokemon trainer. So if you really want Dawn, start scouting for that. I advise anyone to skip for 20 seconds from now because 3, 2, 1. Grimsley and Sharpedo are going to be in the game as a Signa suit a pair, which is going to be really cool. So this is like a souped up pair, and we actually have Berg and Livani from Gen 5 coming into the game. So they've been leaked via the data mine. So yeah, I look forward to that. But that's it for Pokemon Masters. I mean, they've been doing a good job with events and sort of keeping you involved with story events and legendary events.
I mean, that game is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and we're getting a big update in June, so we've got something to look forward to where there's going to be a big legendary arena with Entei, so we've got a lot to look forward to with that game. But we're going to move on to the next segment really quickly. Where the Helioptile is Pokemon Sleep. Tell me, where is it?
I had a word with the developers.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got news from the developers. Unfortunately, they're all Snorlaxes, so they were asleep, and it was tough. I didn't get anything out of them other than.
All right, I'm just going to put the next segment in. That's just.
There's no news on Pokemon Sleep.
So, Pokemon TCG. What a TCG? It's easy as 1, 2, 3. That's the segment. What's going on with the TCG? Talk to me.
You worked really hard on these names, didn't you?
Yeah.
There's some really good news in Pokemon TCG. So the new expansion has been announced, Darkness Ablaze,
Yep.
centering around VMAX Charizard, VMAX Grimmsnarl, and VMAX Centiskorch, which is really exciting. Lots of cool cards being announced. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the really cool things is they've alluded to having new Pokemon from the Isle of Armor DLC, which at the moment we can only assume includes Urshifu and Kubfu, but we do think that it will include a Galarian Slowbro. There have been some sources saying that that will be the case. So
cool.
this might be a case where the TCG has a Pokemon card for a Pokemon that hasn't yet made it to the game, which would be unprecedented, but very, very cool. Japanese release is on the 5th of June, European release on the 14th of August, and American release on the 14th of August.
So I think it's important to add that this Darkness Ablaze expansion is actually going to be made up of 2 Japanese sets, which is the one that you've alluded to releasing on June 5th. Or was it June 5th?
June 5th.
June 5th, and then also Explosive Walker, which has already been released in Japan. So that's pretty cool. We're going to get a big set.
Yeah. But 2 other cards worth mentioning. There will be a Mew V card, which is very exciting. But also, and the one that I really wanted to spend.
When you say there's a Mew V card, what do you mean by that?
So in the previous generations, in Generation 5, we had EX cards that were very, very powerful cards.
In generation, okay. Yeah.
In Generation 6, we had GX cards. And then Generation 7, we had Tag Team cards. So really, really powerful cards. In Generation 8, we now have V and VMAX cards, where a VMAX card is almost like the Dynamaxed form of a V card. So you might have a Charizard V that evolves into Charizard VMAX, and the VMAX card, you get 3 prize cards for knocking it out because it has typically over 300 HP.
It wasn't like the base HP before Dynamax anyway.
Yeah, crazy amounts of HP, crazy amounts of damage, obviously great ability. So lots of points for knocking them out. But the sets are really focused around these VMAX cards.
Okay, cool.
So we're getting a Mew V, no news on a Mew VMAX. But the bit that was really interesting that I wanted to talk about is that they're bringing an Eternatus V card, which makes sense. Eternatus is a legendary.
Eternatus.
That's the point. They're bringing an Eternatus VMAX card, which implies that Eternatus can Dynamax. Now, in the current games, in Sword and Shield, Eternatus is banned from Dynamaxing. It has a move specifically to take down Dynamax Pokemon. But the TCG, whether they've just gone a different way with it or whether this is a hint
I saw the card earlier. They've basically put it as a Turnamax form that we see.
So it's really interesting. You can fight Eternatus Gmax form in the game.
Eternamax.
Eternamax, sure.
That's a bugbear.
That's fine. You can correct me every time.
It's a bugbear.
I'll keep saying it wrong, and you can correct me. But you can fight it in the game in Sword and Shield, but then you can't ever use it once you've caught it. So this might be an illusion that we're going to get the opportunity from the Isle of Armor to do that, which would be pretty exciting.
Oh my god! Have you seen its stats?
Oh yeah, it's insane.
Oh yeah! Oh my god! Can you imagine?
Yeah, and the cards. The card has an ability that allows you to have 8 benched Pokemon if they're all Dark type, and its attack does damage based on the number of Dark type Pokemon you have in play. So in theory, you can increase your damage output to, I think it's 8 bench Pokemon plus your active Pokemon, all Dark type, times, I think it's 30, gives you 270 damage.
That's really interesting because isn't it a dragon poison type? So
yeah, really interesting that they've made it a Dark type. And interestingly, I haven't seen any dragon Pokemon from that set. Salamence is also a normal type Pokemon and not dragon. So I don't know whether they've just dropped dragon Pokemon for the short term or what. But
or maybe just to match the energy of that set, I guess.
Yeah, potentially. But yeah, it's strange to see a Dark type Eternatus. But again, these may all be secrets that we're due to find out in the Isle of Armor.
Cool. Well, Podcast Form has got a news roundup, so let's move to that segment now. What did Podcast Form tell you about?
So Podcast Form told me the most exciting news in a while.
Okay.
Game Freak are on a recruitment drive.
Damn.
So if you want to go work for Pokemon, and it is definitely a Pokemon game they're recruiting for, Creative Village have got adverts up at the moment. Unfortunately, you do have to be able to speak Japanese. You do have to live in Japan. but Creative Village are recruiting for lots of roles, but particularly in the developer and designer space. So it looks like Nintendo are working on development for either a new DLC or perhaps a new Pokemon IP, but certainly new digital gaming content.
Now,
Lots of developers, lots of gamers, lots of testers.
I'm here to ruin your dreams. What if
Here we go.
They're recruiting people for another IP entirely, like Little Town Hero, which they worked on?
The only reason why I know it's not for a new IP is that one, in the job description, it asks you explicitly to have a love for the Pokemon franchise, a knowledge about the Pokemon games, an interest in Pokemon.
Doggy dog!
And the entire Creative Village website is themed on Pokemon. It's definitely listed as roles for a Pokemon IP.
And before Game Freak makes the Digimon game.
No, I did. The moment I saw that advert, I did go and do my homework. I did go onto the Creative Village site. Google translated it for me. I did check some of the job specs. They are all for Pokemon IP. So very, very exciting.
So that's amazing news, and because that's made me a bit more excited. Because now I think we might be getting a new spin-off game. Because I already think they're working on the next Pokemon game at this moment. Because as I theorized, we've already got someone separate for the DLC, so it could be either like a new DLC away from the Crown Tundra and stuff like that, or it could be a new spin-off game. Because I think at the moment they're chock full of people working on the next Pokemon game, so we'll see. But we're getting on in time, so let's go to the next segment. Now you're gonna have to tell me the name of the segment because I have no idea.
So the name of this segment is the Unknown Fact of the Week.
As in like
where I
Pokemon
pull
Unknown?
out... Yeah, like Unknown the Pokemon.
Cool.
I love what you've done with the video. That's fantastic. So this is really some random piece of trivia that I have dug up from the archives to share with you guys, because every time I learn something new about Pokemon, it's always the most bizarre thing I could have thought of. And this week, I wanted to talk about how the anime was originally supposed to end. So back in 2010, one of the lead writers, Takeshi Shudo, passed away. And his blog that had musings on his thoughts around the anime and how he wanted it to pan out came to light. I don't know quite when they came to light, whether it was nearer the time of his death or more recently. But one of the really interesting things that people are talking about at the moment is how Shudo had originally wanted the Pokemon series to end.
What was the timeline around this?
So this would have taken place in the fourth movie, or as Ash was coming to the end of his Johto saga, so at the end of the Gold and Silver arc. And the plan. Do you want to have a guess before I tell you what it was?
He retires like Thanos on a planet and just stops there.
Okay, so you're not a million miles away from one of his two plans. So his first plan was that Ash would become an old man, and that he would look back on his past, and he'd be reminiscing about all the lovely adventures he had and the friendships that he made, and how, as an adult, he never got to experience that level of depth and connection that he did when he was traveling as a kid with Pokemon. The other idea for how he wanted the Pokemon series to end, which would have been the context for the fourth movie, is that Pokemon would have revolted against humanity, having realized that they had been enslaved.
Oh my god!
Pikachu would have led the revolt and would have turned on Ash. And Team Rocket, because Meowth can speak to Pokemon and humans, would have been drafted in as the mediator to try and settle the war. He messed it up, and it left a cataclysmic effect on the Pokemon world and a rift between Pokemons and humans.
Holy God!
Yeah, that was the original.
I had to try my level best at not swearing there, because oh my god, that is something.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Oh my god, dude, we've heard about Pokemon Wars and stuff like that, but really, like someone actually thought that was a good idea.
So Shudo never thought that the Pokemon series was going to run much longer than the time frame that it had, and the idea that it was going to run for even 10 years was, I think, enough to make one of the other writers faint. There's lots of stories coming out about that.
Yeah.
He was hospitalized when he heard that story. I'm sure that's exaggerated, but apparently he was taken to hospital.
Laugh, but
But so Shudo had this plan about how he was going to end the series, and the way he was going to do that was with this war.
I'm just moving on. I can't take any more of this. Really?
That's your unknown fact of the week.
That unknown. Okay. So we're going to move on to the very last segment, which is not actually a segment. It's just any other business, really. Do you have any other business to go about?
No, it's just wonderful to be back podcasting. I'm loving the reboot. I'm super excited, and we've actually done really well for time as well.
Yeah, I'm going to try cut it for 45 minutes to an hour per episode, just to respect other people's time and your time, obviously. But if there is a lot to talk about, then I guess we're going to have to find a time in a day and sit down and just blurt it all out, like the first ever podcast we did, which was like 2 hours long.
I'm sure that the Isle of Armor DLC will be very much along.
Oh god, I can't wait! I guess so. For the next week, what's on the docket for next week? What's the big main feature for next week?
Next week, our big feature is a spoiler cast. So we'll be talking spoilers and reviewing the Sun and Moon anime series that's now come to an end in all regions. Finished up in the UK only a couple of weeks ago. It's now available on Pokemon TV. If you want to go and watch the whole thing before next week, you can do. Every episode is now available, so you should probably go do that before they take it off.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll be doing a full spoiler cast on the Sun and Moon anime series, sharing our thoughts and feelings about how it ended, what happened, and everything from art styles to music and everything in between. So look forward to that next week.
I will quickly add that, I grew accustomed to the art style. I had a certain appreciation for what it did for the animation, but, it's not in my top 10, that's for sure.
All for next week.
Yeah. If you want to send any feedback or questions, you can send that to us at PokeRAMBLEPod@gmail.com. As I said, we will be putting this up on YouTube, and it should be there by tomorrow. So just search for the PokeRAMBLE Podcast on YouTube. And yeah, hopefully Spotify by next week. So watch this space. But until then, I've been Kamel.
I've been the Frontier Brain Amit.
And yeah, we're out. Take care, people.